Because it's not just been like a steady climb. It's been more like a series of, well, paradigm shifts, right?
It genuinely has. The journey of AI, when you actually look at it chronologically, it's kind of astonishing. The pace keeps accelerating. If we cast our minds back to its origins, say the 1950s, 1960s, AI back then was fundamentally about logic-based systems, rule-driven algorithms. Think of it like this. Early AI, it was built to follow a recipe exactly. Every single step, every decision path had to be explicitly spelled out by a human programmer. This was the era when pioneers like Alan Turing wrote his really seminal 1950 paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence. And he introduced the Turing test. The core idea wasn't just about defining intelligence, but setting a benchmark. Could a machine behave in a way you couldn't tell apart from a human? It was foundational, definitely laid the groundwork. But the systems themselves, they were pretty simple, operating within these really constrained, predefined rule sets.
And then famously came the periods people call the AI winters, right? It wasn't just this straight shot upwards. Progress kind of stalled out sometimes.
Precisely. Yeah, the 1970s and 1980s saw the rise of what we called expert systems. Now, these were designed to simulate human decision-making, but only in really narrow, specialized areas, like diagnosing specific medical conditions or configuring complex computer systems. They were basically just these vast knowledge bases filled with thousands of if-then rules that human experts had painstakingly coded. But the limitations, well, they became painfully apparent pretty quickly. The sheer lack of raw computing power back then, and also the scarcity of large, diverse data sets needed to train anything more flexible, it led to some significant setbacks, disillusionment even. These periods, the AI winters, they weren't really a failure of vision, I think, but more a crucial lesson in patience. It kind of taught us that the hardware and the data infrastructure, they had to catch up with the theoretical ambition. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs aren't just in the algorithms, but in the underlying stuff that lets those algorithms actually, shine.
But then the ice started to thaw, didn't it?
Yeah.
And we started hearing of machine learning, which sounded like a completely different approach.
Indeed. The 1990s and 2000s, they marked a really significant shift, almost a philosophical one, towards machine learning. This approach focused less on hard-coded rules and much more on statistical pattern recognition. So instead of telling the AI exactly what to do in every single scenario, you'd feed it just vast amounts of data and let it learn the patterns for itself. A really pivotal moment, one that kind of cemented this shift in the public eye, was back in 1997. That's when IBM's Deep Blue famously beat the world chess champion Garry Kasparov. And this wasn't just, a computer winning a game. It really demonstrated AI's capacity for complex strategic thinking and pattern recognition on a scale we hadn't seen before. It learned from millions of past chess games rather than being explicitly programmed for every possible move. Big difference.
And that, of course, led us pretty much directly into what feels like the real explosion of AI we've seen just in the last decade or so. Deep learning just seems to be everywhere now.
Absolutely. The 2010s really ushered in the deep learning revolution, and it was genuinely propelled by advances in neural networks. These are these multi-layered computational structures, kind of loosely inspired by the human brain, and they're capable of processing incredibly complex data. And these networks, they just transformed capabilities in areas we pretty much take for granted now, like highly accurate image recognition, sophisticated natural language processing, advanced game playing. Think of AlphaGo, right? DeepMind's program that used deep learning and reinforcement learning to beat the world champion of Go. And Go is a game that's far, far more complex than chess, with just an astronomical number of possible moves. The ability of these networks to learn from these massive data sets and identify these really intricate, non-obvious patterns, that really changed the game entirely, made AI capabilities seem almost, well, magical sometimes.
And now, here we are, 2020s.